Welcome back, dear listener. Today's episode is a little different and very special. A few weeks ago, I was interviewed by my friend Noga Shefi on her podcast, which is called Your Healing Era. It's all about transformation, creativity, and the nervous system side of healing. The conversation flowed so beautifully, and we went so deep into one of my favorite topics, visibility as medicine. How learning to be seen is not just a professional skill, but a powerful part of the healing journey. So, with Noga's permission, I'm sharing that conversation with you here. We talk about visibility wounds, imposter syndrome, and what it really means to show up authentically without burning out or abandoning yourself. Whether you're an artist, healer, or sensitive human learning to take up more space in your life, I think this one will really speak to your heart. Here's my conversation with Noga Shefi on Your Healing Era.
Hi, welcome. You are listening to Your Healing Era, hosted by me, Noga Shefi. This podcast is for you if you're ready to find a way of healing and living your dream life with peace of mind in a non-conventional way, despite what modern society has to offer and despite the limitations of the Western medical system. The conversations and tools that I'll share here will give you ideas, inspiration, and direction to find your own version of healing. Please take what resonates, leave the rest. I'm so excited that you're here, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Your Healing Era. I'm very excited to have Anna Holtzman here with me today. Anna is a therapist turned visibility coach who helps sensitive creatives, healers, entrepreneurs overcome the fear of being seen so that they can share their voice and sustain their creative work without burning out. Before coaching, Anna spent 15 years behind the scenes in publishing and reality TV editing, where she learned firsthand how easy it is to hide from visibility and how painful it feels when creative momentum fizzles. Chronic migraines and burnout eventually led her to mind-body medicine and the nervous system tools that help her reclaim her own creative voice and start showing up consistently. Today, Anna draws on her background in both media and mental health to guide others through visibility wounds, imposter syndrome, and the nervous system blocks that keeps them stuck. She's also the host of the podcast How to Trust Yourself, where she shares stories and tools for nervous system safe visibility. Anna lives in Queens, New York with her husband, stepdaughter, and 3 orange cats. Anna, thank you for being here on my podcast today. How are you? What's alive for you these days?
Noga, thank you so much for having me here. And it's really so nice to see you again. And I feel so calmed by being in your presence, actually. So that feels just very alive for me right now. And also, just off camera here is the biggest of my 3 orange cats. And he is just curled up and passed out in total bliss.
I love that. It's so good to see you too. I have so many questions for you today, and we'll see what we get to. But really, visibility is such a huge thing. The more social media ramps up and the need for it and the internet, it's on one hand this like huge blessing that anyone can just put themselves out there and promote themselves. And on the other hand, it's this huge like, holy shit, like being seen by so many eyes. I don't even know who's seeing it. And it brings up a lot of stuff for a lot of people. So I want to dive right away into this topic that I think it really speaks to a lot of the listeners, which is visibility wounds. What are visibility wounds? Like, what do you mean? How do you know? How do you recognize them?
Yeah. So, and by the way, like I hadn't even heard this term visibility. I mean, obviously I know it's a word in the dictionary, but I hadn't heard it being used commonly until somewhat recently. I don't know if that's just because it hadn't been on my radar, but I do think it's much more in the conversation now, and it just it this topic helps me make sense of my own experience through like earlier parts of my creative life so much. So I guess what comes to my mind to share is that, as you mentioned when you're introducing me, before I was working as a therapist and coach, I worked in the creative fields, first publishing and then in television. And I was always a creative for hire. But that's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be front and center. I wanted to be putting my own work out into the world. I made several different film projects. I had several writing projects. And what would happen was kind of over and over and over again, I would feel inspired and creative and I would put something out there. So I would make myself visible. I'd share my work. And initially, when I would get some kind of positive feedback, I'd feel really excited, almost too excited to handle, if that makes sense. You know, it's like I'm an electrical fuse, and the fuse gets very excited and sort of like burns itself out pretty quickly on the excitement. But then, you know, there'd be like a drop off in the adrenaline, or more often, you know, I'd get some kind of feedback that didn't feel friendly, whether it was overt criticism, you know, someone didn't like the film, and that happened, or whether it was just like, you know, a film festival saying, "Oh, we really liked your film, but it's like doesn't fit with our lineup this season." It, I, just as intense as the excitement felt when I got positive feedback, that no, whether it was kind of harsh or much more subtle, it felt scary. I wouldn't have described it that way back then. I wouldn't have described it at all. That's the thing. Like I just was like, would go into like a fugue state because looking back in hindsight from all of the nervous system knowledge I have now, I can say I went into freeze. You know, I recoiled and I went into freeze and a kind of like a dissociative state almost, such that I didn't really even know what was happening. And then it would be like a few months later, I'd kind of wake up from that fog and look back and say, oh, that never really took off. That project never took off. What I wasn't seeing is I stopped showing up for it because I went into a freeze and it was uncomfortable and I didn't know what was happening and I also didn't know how to get out of it. But when I talk about visibility wounds, another layer that is clear to me now in hindsight is that those experiences, you know, like a festival saying like, thanks, but it doesn't fit with the lineup, like that's just a normal thing. But it would then trip these wires of these old memories. And one, there's plenty of them that I could share, but the one that for some reason comes up the most often in my journaling and in a, you know, therapy or coaching session where I'm the client is this memory of when I was in second grade and I was a really enthusiastic student. I loved school and I loved raising my hand and I had to wiggle in my seat like, oh, so excited to share, you know? And one time the teacher who I really loved and admired a lot, she must have been in a bad mood that day because she looked at me wiggling in the chair and she goes, Anna, nobody likes a know-it-all. And it was like, oof, like a stab to the heart. I felt so ashamed of myself. I didn't know I was, and I wasn't doing something wrong, of course, but that's how it felt. Like I thought I was, you know, I had my heart open and my just, you know, vulnerability and love and thought I was just like sharing myself with the world. And then basically I was told like, shut up, nobody wants this. And it was so, it hurt, but I felt so ashamed. You know, I just wanted to crumple up and I had regret for putting myself out there. And that is an imprinting experience. And we all have not just one, but many of those that get stirred up when we put ourselves out there. And if we're met with anything but unbridled enthusiasm, that can get triggered, those old memories.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if we don't know what the specific memory is or what
Yeah.
was the experience or experiences that shaped this part of us.
And usually we not only do we not know what the specific memory is, but we just usually we're not even aware of what's happening. It's just like, I don't feel good. Let me go open the fridge or let me go, do something else distracting.
So, how do you differentiate between fear of being seen that comes from trauma like that or like the normal jitters of putting yourself out there? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe a better way to ask this is how do you help someone discern whether they're feeling their nervous system signaling this is not safe or this is just like a little discomfort of growth, or maybe
yeah.
they're not that different.
I would say, and all I can speak from is my own subjective opinion on things. I don't think it really matters. I mean, I think what matters is what's happening in the present moment. And what matters is what helps us through what's happening in the present moment. So, but to relate it to what you asked, I think there are some instances, and I'll just use myself as the example because I'm right here to, I am my own science experiment. So for myself, there are moments when I feel my body tightening up and my thoughts are like spinning in negative self-criticism because either I'm getting ready to be visible, maybe to be on a podcast or something like that, or because I've just been visible. Maybe I've just led a workshop and my nervous system is like coming off that adrenaline. And I feel that anxiety coming up. There are times when I can just say, oh yeah, of course I'm feeling the anxiety of like visibility. And I just put a hand on my chest and, rub my chest like you would rub a baby who's needing to be soothed. And then it's just whew, and it kind of, softens up enough for me to keep moving forward. It's just like noticing it, normalizing it, soothing, being kind to myself. And then, I can move through into the rest of my day. And then there are other moments when I don't know why that isn't sufficient. And it doesn't really matter to me why. What matters is, okay, if that's not helping me to move through, if that's not enough, then what else would be helpful? Sometimes I need to co-regulate with another person. So I'll call a friend or I'll schedule a session with my own coach and, you know, share that energy back and forth, receive their empathy, feel their kindness, and that helps me settle. Sometimes, and then I'm good. And other times it's like, this just feels so sticky. And I don't know why it's like just not moving. And so I want to journal about it. And sometimes, like a story, like that second grade experience, will come through in the journaling. And then it's like, oh, wow, that really impacted me, that experience back then. And now I want to talk that story through with, with my coach or journal more about it and really like offer my younger self that affirmation that it didn't receive at the time. But, each moment is sometimes I need more, sometimes less. And I don't really know necessarily why. And it doesn't really matter to me why, as long as I can identify what do I need in this moment. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. Thank you for sharing those experiences. This is making me think about the different stages of putting yourself out there. Like some of us are maybe stuck before even, like not being even able to do it. So there's the before, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking about the during, and I'm thinking about the after, like what Brene Brown likes to call the visibility hangover.
Oh, yeah. I love that term. It so captures it.
Is it different things that help us at those different stages, or what do
I
you think?
think so. I think so. I mean, I'll just share what came to top of my mind because funny enough, I was recording a solo podcast episode about this topic right before we got on. So, as you would expect, a lot of my clients, when my coaching clients, when we first get together to work together, quite often they're in that stage of afraid to be visible, afraid to take the first step. Yeah, that's why they came to work with me. So, in that stage, what I find is that I have a very gentle approach in general. That's just me. It's my personality. It's what people always tell me, like, oh, you're so gentle. Like, I'm always hearing that word. And I think probably the reason why I exude gentleness is because I'm quite sensitive and I need a gentle approach. I don't respond well to like tough love or pressure. I just freeze in response to that. So my approach with clients is quite gentle and loving. And in that stage of like fear to begin, I think that the loving thing to do is to be a bit firm and quite encouraging. And something that I've said to multiple clients, like in the first and second session, oftentimes it's just like a spinning around and around, like talking around the thing they want to do and all the fears. And we're working together, we're processing the fears, but the action's not happening yet. And I'll say, look, the you'll get the most benefit out of our work together if you take action immediately. And then we use our session to process the fear that comes up in the aftermath of the action, because it will. I, I can guarantee it. I mean, it's just a given. And if the action you've decided to take feels too big and scary, let's break it down, make it smaller, 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 small enough to do. And no matter how small it looks on paper, it's still going to stir up fear. And then we'll get to work through that. And that's the process. That's where the growth happens.
Yeah, I recently saw a post on your Instagram that said something around the longer you wait, the more the fear builds up.
I mean, I think we all know that experience, right? From like any area of life, whether it's like where there's something we need to talk through with a friend and we're afraid to bring it up with them, or whether it's something that's more related to professional visibility. It's the lead up is so intense and
Yeah,
oftentimes more intense than the experience of actually stepping into it.
absolutely. The fear of the thing is sometimes so much bigger than the thing itself.
Oh, yeah.
I also know that you're a big fan of journal, big part of your practice for me, but I have been on and off doing things like morning pages and stuff where I was dedicated like a long period to doing that regularly. And it is really profound just for understanding like all the junk that's just all the stuff that's spinning. So I feel like maybe even before even getting into nervous system work, it does help to just understand what is really going on first, even intellectually understanding, oh, okay, so I'm like, here are my fears, da 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 da, like just getting clarity on what it is that's really behind what's blocking you from putting yourself out there. And it could be layered, and there's could be many
Mm.
things. So just first
Yeah.
understanding it is so important.
Absolutely. I have a very specific style of journaling that I like to do. And it's yeah, like you said, it's a huge part of my personal process. Um, and it really is like I'll just describe it. So it's a dialogue with my fear. Like I
Ooh.
imagine my fear as like some big scary monster that really is just a frightened little child inside. And for me, the way to work with my fear is to sit down with it as if I'm the therapist and the fear as the client. And I'll just ask it questions like, what are you feeling? What emotions are you feeling? And then I let the stream of consciousness answer me on the page. And oftentimes, this process surprises me because the fear might start off saying, like, well, I'm afraid. And then it's like, I'm angry. You haven't talked to me in in a week. You haven't sat down with me. I don't trust you. I hate you, and it goes through all that. And then it's like, I feel really hurt. I feel lonely. I feel scared. I feel like I'm all alone. And then, it just will cycle through. Once it has someone to listen, it will start revealing things to me that wouldn't be revealed to me if I didn't sit down with it and ask it questions.
So what kind of questions? You would write a question and then you would write kind of stream
Yeah,
of consciousness of
my journal, well, my journal looks like total like messiness. I think anyone else would be able to read it. But if you could read it, if it was typed out, it would look like a script of a play because it is a dialogue. So it's like I use different terms at different times, but it might be like my higher self says, "Dear fear, what are you feeling?" And then fear says all these different feelings and it just spills. And then the higher self says, "What would you like me to know?" And then the fear might be like, "I want you to stop being so visible. This is so stressful for me. Like, can't you just stop doing all this stuff and just stay at home and close the curtains?" and then and then the higher self will say, "Oh, what are you trying to protect me from?" And oftentimes that's where things really get revealed to me. And the fear is like, trying to protect you from people laughing at you like they did in the cafeteria when you went to the new high school. And that was so uncomfortable and blah, blah, blah. And then finally I get to respond compassionately. And that's really key because I think a lot of journaling practices, I think there's so many different journaling practices that can be helpful and useful, and there's no right or wrong way. But for myself, I find if I just let the feelings and the stories flow onto the page and then that's the end, I sort of feel like I went into, my friend's living room and spewed all my feelings out and they're like, "Okay, anyway, now what are we doing next?"
Yeah, I feel like sometimes like the most healing part of journaling is letting it move through, even if it's like pen to paper, just so it's
Yeah.
not all stuck inside.
Yeah. Absolutely. I find that part very, very impactful. And I need this like response part where I write to the fear and I write things like, I totally understand why you feel that way. I love you. And I want you to know you're not alone. I'm right here. I'm going to stand up for you. I'm by your side, all this stuff. And I can feel that scared part inside me. It's like breathing a sigh of relief.
It almost sounds to me like also like inner child work.
Totally.
And it also makes me think about there's different ways to go about it, but there's different quote unquote mindset journaling tools that I've learned from a coach that are kind of taking different segments to your journaling sesh and
Yeah.
having starting with like, what you want and then moving to like what you're afraid of and then recognizing in what you write all of these statements that are your beliefs in a sense. Some would say limiting beliefs, and then
Yeah.
seeing how you can reframe them. Which I mean, everyone have their approaches. It doesn't mean to negate the fear or negate any feelings, but it's a reframe because all these different beliefs exist at the same time. Like we're walking paradoxes, right? It's like we
Yes.
have these clashing beliefs inside of us. Like one part of me
Yeah.
could be like, this is they're gonna laugh at me, right? And then the other part of me is like, but they need to hear this. This is beneficial for me and for others for me to say this out loud or to share myself in that way. So those are like clashing beliefs. So like journaling often helps to really illuminate what is going on and gives you
Yeah.
much more agency and just choice of like, okay, which one do you want to go with? Which one's really
Totally.
going to serve you and the world, really?
Yeah, I relate to that completely. I mean, I definitely draw I'm influenced by all the different things I've taken in, and parts work is a big part of that, or IFS, internal family systems. Sometimes I feel like in my journaling, there's like three or more parties that are dialoguing, and it's almost like a couples therapy session or family therapy session where each part needs to be listened to because they can't collaborate with each other until they understand each other, until they build trust with each other.
So here's something I find a little bit more tricky. So I see so many incredible artists, creative people who just can't seem to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
Or they do like the very, very basic thing, maybe posting once, but mostly just wanting to do the work itself, work on their art, work on their music, and don't want to deal with putting themselves out there. And there's different stories behind that that are maybe not what we're talking about of, oh, when I was in middle school, like someone laughed at me or whatever. Like they have stories that seem really valid.
Oh, yeah.
Why you won't put yourself out there, like this anti-social media or like anti-interviews.
Yeah.
I don't know if partially it's like, being very purist and just simply just wanting to not deal with anything other than the work itself. Maybe thinking it might seem salesy to like actually
Yeah.
put your work out there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, well, two things. And the first is I would never tell anyone that they should put themselves out there if they don't want to, because that's completely valid. Why? I mean, this is not a mandate for everyone to share their work publicly. And I know that for many creatives, um, and I'm going to just include myself in it, we do have a desire to be met and seen and to connect through our work. And very often, these stories about, like, well, I just don't believe in, like, that's so tacky to self promotion. I think very often underneath it is a fear of rejection. And the I find that the nervous system is a lot like the Wizard of Oz, where or like a chameleon. Like it will put on all these different costumes that help it to achieve its goal of keeping you safe. So it might put on the costume of like a snob, to say like, oh, self-promotion is so uncool. And and that achieves the goal of keeping you safe by preventing you from putting yourself out there.
Yeah. So clearly it's not a mandate, like you said. You don't have to put yourself out there. The reason I was asking about it is because, I just feel bad. I see people stay broke.
Yeah,
I'm like, you
this
don't
is a
have to be
huge
broke.
thing. I mean, this is huge, and it's like, it's interesting, and I think it's far from a coincidence that you and I both are both creatives and work in the healing arts, right? Um, there are many people who are in either one or both of these categories who are kind of stuck in this starving artist idea, whether they're artists or whether they're working in the healing world. This is rampant, this idea that either it's not cool to charge money for what I do or to promote myself, or it's not ethical. I mean, that's a huge one. I think maybe more so in the healing arts world, but maybe it's
Yeah.
throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very sticky stories. We hear them echoed by other people, which gives them, more of a sense of validity. But I honestly do think that these are protective mechanisms.
I think so too. I mean, I've been in the process of rewiring certain beliefs around money for years.
Yeah.
And an example I like to give people who might feel bad to charge, to raise their prices, to charge money for certain work in the healing arts or in music is like, so you think that's okay for like somebody on Wall Street who's playing with numbers all day to make the salary that they make? How do they benefit the world exactly? And why? Just like a whole total reframe of the true worth of work in the healing arts and in arts and music and creative work in general. Just like a total reframe that is needed so that people stop telling themselves the story that it's not ethical to charge money and to ask for money and to
Oh,
put
yeah.
yourself out there and to promote yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many angles we could look at this that bring up the kind of holes in these stories. Like another one that comes to mind, you and I met in a training program that's like a trauma healing modality. And it's not cheap, that program, right?
Right.
So the all of the people who are taking it have invested something, that's significant to them financially in taking that training program. And also many of them are really hesitating to charge what is even like an average fee for the work they do.
Mm-hmm. Something I think I definitely know for myself, and I think a lot of people struggle with, is that swing between overexposure, like a time where you're either posting a lot, or maybe an artist performing a lot, or putting out something big and like pushing on that. And then between that and then like total hiding of like going silent for months or
Yeah.
disappearing. How can nervous system awareness help us find consistency, or maybe we do we even need consistency, or what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah. I think I think what feels best to most of us is a flow, like the waves of the ocean where we come in and out of visibility in hopefully waves that feel gentle. But oftentimes, many of us, myself included, are experiencing what feel like not waves, but jagged cliffs where it's like going up past our, range of what feels containable. And then so because it's so overwhelming, then we crash and we want to hide under the bed for the next year or so. And I've certainly been there, and quite honestly, I feel like I'm finding more. I'm getting closer to gentle waves, really, for the first time in my life now. And I'm not perfectly there, and I don't expect to ever be in any kind of perfect state of regulation. I think that's a myth. I think that the things that help me the most are to have, like, if you can imagine like an upper limit and a lower limit, and where we feel like we're in danger of like crashing through both through the upper limit and then crashing down through the lower limit, it's helpful to have cushioning and padding on both sides. And for me, with that cushioning and padding, that helps me kind of like ease back into the stream of things. The top thing that comes to my mind, even though like, yeah, journaling is such an important thing to me, but when it comes to helping myself ease back down from that peak that feels too high, or ease back up from that crash, it's really connecting with other people. I need to connect with other people, specifically other people on a similar journey who are like, oh, yeah, I get it. I totally get it. You're not alone. Like for me, that just helps revive me so much.
Connection is huge. I've been listening to this podcast with do you know the Jay Shetty podcast?
Yes.
I've heard an episode here and there. I'm not like an avid follower, but he just had Emma Watson, the actress, reach out to him and ask if she could be on his podcast. And I'm in the middle of watching that interview because she is a very successful actress who had an entire life career. She's like younger than I am. She's like in her mid 30s. And like 5 years ago, she decided to stop everything and
Wow.
just kind of go on her own journey and get, go back to school. She talks a lot about meditation retreats she did and her practice and how a lot of it, why am I talking about this? Because she's talking about those big waves that we're talking about, like how
Yeah.
intense the work can be. And it's crazy how much of the stuff she was talking about was resonating deeply with me as someone who used to be like going on tour and just being like, go, 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 go all the time, and the excitement and the busyness and the edginess, and then like the crash that comes when you're like
Yeah.
back in town and you're like, whoa, like now it's so these ups and downs could be really, really intense for artists. So when you talk about cushioning, you talked about connection. What else could be cushioning people who
Yeah.
are now in this really intense kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say, even doing an Instagram live, going on Instagram and talking to people, if that's not something that your nervous system is accustomed to, you could feel a major crash after that. And people do. And I know because my clients talk to me about it. And I understand because I'm more acclimated to that now. But, it wasn't so long ago that I was feeling the same way, very overwhelmed by that. But I guess the step before even connection that I should go back to is awareness. Having the awareness that, oh, my nervous system is feeling overstimulated. Oh, my nervous system is going into a crash because it was overstimulated. So just having a context for understanding what's happening with us so we don't feel confused or bewildered by it, because that can lead to us feeling like we're broken, and that leads to more fear. So having the awareness and naming it, really naming it to ourselves, that alone can start helping things to soften and settle a little bit. Were you about to say something?
And I'm just thinking about how much there is dopamine, or I don't know how many other chemicals are involved. And then I was thinking how it's like totally can also just happen from like having something go viral or getting a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
popularity over something on socials, but also like the dopamine and the excitement and the cortisol and the stuff that runs you when you're like doing really well and you're out there and you're like doing your thing and everything's going great. And then like, yeah, the crash is like basically, whoa, all of a sudden all that stimulation
Yeah.
is gone, all of that feedback is gone, all of that recognition or the likes or the whatever. Yeah.
I've even experienced it connecting one on one with, like, a new person that's maybe a colleague or, someone I like or admire in some way. And then, we chat one on one for the first time, and it's like, oh, wow, I really like what you do, and you like what I do, and that's so cool. And then afterward, I'm like, oh my God, I need to go on a walk. I need to take a shower. I'm so overstimulated by this.
Yeah.
And recognizing that that's the case is really helpful, because then I can make space for it. Then I can do the things. So, and then this brings in what else is helpful for cushioning. So I talked about co-regulation, connection with other people. There's the journaling that we've talked about. I dialogue with my fear through the journaling. And then, the very, oftentimes very simple things that I do for self regulation that really are as simple as going for a long walk. That might not be what the next person does for self regulation. It's just that's what works for me. That's what helps me settle. I go for a long walk. I go to there's I live in Jackson Heights in Queens, and it's not a place you would expect to find a French bakery. It's just that's just not the vibe. But there's this really quirky place. It's like a big parking lot with all these different box stores, and then this little French cafe is in there. I'll go in there and buy myself a tea with milk. I just that settles me. I feel good in there. It just, connects with my senses in a way that feels cozy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, those little moments of connection with self, self-soothing, self-care, however that looks for people. But I like walking, like moving the body sometimes really helps. Sometimes stillness helps. Sometimes a cup of tea at the
Yeah.
bakery. Okay, I have quite a few topics I want to talk about, but I am aware of time. So let me ask you, can I tell you what are the few questions I'm
Yeah,
thinking of?
totally.
One thing that would be cool to talk about is self-trust and connecting with self-trust when there's inner critic. Another thing I really want to talk about is imposter syndrome. And another thing I want to talk about, just ask you if you have anything that you're struggling with currently in regards to visibility.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we have time for all three. I don't know. And then also have time at the end to ask you how people can find you.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I could start with self-trust. For me, that's journaling is all about building self-trust. And I mean, I've journaled in some way or another since I was a teenager. But when I really dove into journaling as a therapeutic tool for myself, that was much more recently, like in the last 5 to 8 years. I rediscovered journaling as a tool to help me heal from chronic migraines. And so I came to it with an intensity, which is kind of funny because in the world of mind body chronic pain therapy that I have been educated in, they teach that like you should not use these tools with intensity because intensity will ramp up the tension and the stress in your body. And it's true. But when you begin, you're in a place of intensity because you're in pain and you're in fear, and that's how it starts. And so I came into it with great intensity, journaling religiously every single day. And that eventually I had to ease up on the intensity. But initially it was useful because never before in my life had I made the time to have a conversation with myself every single day. Like, you want to build trust in a relationship with another person, say, like a romantic partner. You don't go for months without talking. That deteriorates the trust between you. You check in with each other every day. And checking in with myself and having a conversation, asking questions and listening to myself every day. I mean, I'm really getting chills and I feel the emotion rising in me because it changed my relationship with myself profoundly. Not in some kind of like theoretical way. Like, it changed how I feel being with me. And it transformed my relationship with myself into one of much greater trust. And just like my relationship with my husband, like that trust will start to break down again when I go for like a week without having a conversation with myself. And that happens, that happens. And then it's like, oh, I feel it. The trust is breaking down. Like, I need to reconnect with myself. And for me, journaling is just such a powerful way to do that.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really inspiring me. I've been feeling an urge to journal about a couple things that came up and some dreams I've had lately, but I just kept putting it aside. I don't know because I had other things to do, but yeah, you're inspiring me to get to it.
Cool.
Anna, are there visibility things that you still struggle with these
Of
days?
course. I'm sure there always will be because you know, I like to grow. And so I'm always wanting to like continued to grow, and then growing into new spaces and visibility is always bringing up fear because it's it's expanding into new realms. And so like currently I'm guesting on a lot more podcasts because I decided I really love podcasting. Like that, similar to journaling, it's just a medium I really like. And I pivoted the focus of my business about a year ago, my coaching business. Previously, my niche, my focus had been helping people alleviate chronic pain symptoms through nervous system work. And then I shifted that focus to helping people with fear of visibility, moving through that so they can express themselves and bring their creative work or their entrepreneurial work or whatever their self-expression is out into the world. It's something it's a passion for me, and I love supporting people with this. And in order to support people, you need to let people know that you're there to support them. So you need to make yourself visible. You need to get out there. You need to spread the word. And I decided I wanted to do that through guesting on podcasts. And I had, it's nice to connect with someone you already know, which is the case between you and I. And there's only so many people I already know that have podcasts. So it involved reaching out to people I didn't know. And that felt really scary. And I avoided it for months, And what helped me to like finally take the steps into that was, it's so related to the kind of stuff that I coach my clients on, of course, because I am right there with them. I realized I was approaching it as like a barrier to break through. Like there's this podcast barrier and I need to break through it and get into the castle somehow. And then I was like, that doesn't feel good. It feels scary. It's not an approach I think will land well with these human beings on the other end of the emails I'm sending. Like, let me look at it more like I'm networking among like friends of friends of friends of friends. And someone who knows someone who knows blah, 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 blah. Like they look interesting and I'd like to meet them. So how can I reach out and say, there's something we have in common, and if you're open to it, would you like to meet? Like I'd love to meet you. I'd love to talk with you. And that helped ease me into it.
That's cool. Yeah, because I would think, like, why would anyone not want to have you on their podcast? But I understand that inside that feels different. I know you also support people with the whole concept of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That's something I think most people listening can relate to. I can speak for myself for sure.
What I have to say on this is very, very simple, actually. I conceptualize imposter syndrome as a symptom of nervous system activation. I was talking before about how the nervous system will just employ any kind of costume or form that will put on the brakes and protect you from visibility by getting you to hide and stay small. So, what I find useful in navigating imposter syndrome is simply to name it as a symptom of nervous system activation. And then when I do that, I'm not going to get into an argument with it. I'm not going to try to convince it it's wrong. I'm not going to believe that it's right. I'm not going to have a conversation with it. I'm actually going to turn away from it and turn toward my heart or my nervous system, my inner child, and say, oh, I heard a signal out there called imposter syndrome that let me know that you're feeling scared right now. How can I comfort you?
That's beautiful. So yeah, I talk about that a lot too, just being able to identify the symptoms. Because when you know yourself and you know your particular set of tendencies, it can really kind of bring you back into focus, right? It can show you
Yeah.
like, oh, look, you're going to that place again. I've recently identified a certain kind of story I start to have when I'm starting to feel depressed. It's like a very specific story that I used to like believe. And now I'm like, oh, look, you're doing that again. Like, what do you need? You know?
Totally. I relate to that word for word. And I think of it as like, oh, there are these certain negative stories that I'll tell myself when I'm feeling stressed. Just like there's certain tics that I find myself doing when I'm stressed. Like I'll just be like obsessively looking at Instagram for no reason. I just look at them as they're all the same thing. They're just nervous tics.
That's a guess a healthier way of of looking at it. And then, once you know the symptoms, then maybe hopefully finding the things to help soothe or to bring back some level of groundedness or centeredness or relief.
And I just want to be clear about this. It's not that now I'm like, I'm just so zen and I am a total stress ball. That's why I have these tools. That's why I use these tools.
Yeah.
They're ongoing practices.
Yeah. Same. A lot of people tell me I seem so cool and like, I'm like, oh, if you only knew.
No.
If you
People
only
tell me
knew.
I seem so calm.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing a certain layer.
I mean, but also years of practice does create
Yeah.
these qualities. So you're not just a stress ball.
Yes, and you can be when you practice this stuff, I think you can be in the both and. It's not about eliminating the stress. It's about being able to be present with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Anna, I don't want to go over time too much. Anything else that I feel like we can talk forever, and I love all the topics that we covered. Anything else that you have to say on any of that or anything we missed?
Is it okay if I invite people to
Yeah, or
take my
how can people
workshop?
find you?
Yeah. Yeah, I would invite listeners, if any of this is connecting with you, to come and experience my workshop. I have a free workshop that's called Let Yourself Be Seen, and it's a visibility workshop that works with the nervous system. I'll guide you through a journaling practice. You can actually experience um, a little taste of these tools that we've been talking about here. So if you go to my site, annaholtzman.com/be seen, you can download the workshop and please let me know what comes up for you as you go through it.
Beautiful. I'm gonna put the link to that free workshop in the description if anyone wants to check it out, and I'll put Anna's website and her Instagram if you want to follow for more.
And I have a podcast that Noga is a guest on. So please
Right.
listen to that. It's called How to Trust Yourself.
How to Trust Yourself. Go listen to Anna's podcast. I'll link that also. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. What a pleasure to just be talking to you. It's so fun.
Oh, same. Thank you so much for having me here. And it's just so nice to connect with you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Your Healing Era. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave a review. It helps me to reach more listeners like you. If you have a question or a topic you'd like me to cover, I'd love to hear from you. All the links will be down at the show notes, where you can also find the most recent updates, offerings, and get on that mailing list. Until then, take care everybody, and peace.
I hope you loved that conversation as much as I did. I'm so grateful to Noga for inviting me into this grounded, soulful space to talk about visibility through the lens of healing and self-trust. If you want to connect with her work, and I highly recommend that you do, you can find her on Instagram at noga.shefi and at nogashefi.com. Those will be in the show notes. Her programs and podcast are full of depth, wisdom, and nervous system informed insight for creatives and healers. And if you're ready to explore visibility as your next layer of healing, I'd love to support you. You can watch my free workshop, Let Yourself Be Seen, at annaholtzman.com/be seen, or join the waitlist for Seen and Safe, my group program for sensitive creatives and entrepreneurs learning to show up for their purpose with nervous system support. Or you can get in touch with me about working with me one-on-one. Send me an email, anna@annaholtzman.com. Until next time, take gentle care of your nervous system and remember, being seen is part of your healing.